This video is my reaction to the Detroit Lions' 34-27 win over the Giants at home on Sunday in Week 12, 4 days before their critical rematch in the division against the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs was the superstar today. He plugged in a Lions offense that at times looked effective, but oftentimes not. Looked really horrible in my opinion. Gibbs put up 264 yards of offense by himself, including the go-ahead or the game-winning 69-yard touchdown on the first snap of overtime. It's super ironic to me that Aiden Hutchinson clinches the win with his only sack on the 4th and 5 in overtime. And what I mean by that is, well, we'll talk about Gibbs here first, who ran for 219 yards on 15 carries. But there's something about this win that's extremely familiar and a little bit annoying. But let's focus on Gibbs for a moment. I think he's got almost 600 yards of offense in the last 3 games. I'm just going to highlight the 3 biggest portions of it. 140 rushing yards against the Commanders 3 games ago at this point, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Last week's loss, Week 11, on the road in Philly, 107 receiving yards on 5 catches against the Eagles. And then now 219 rushing yards, 2 long touchdown runs, a third score, a short passing reception, to beat the Giants and get the Detroit Lions to 7-4. By my math, Gibbs is now at 951 rushing yards on 155 carries, or 6.13 per carry. I almost want to say that's right in line with his yards per carry, but I believe he was 5.8 or 5.7 in 2024. So at this point, he's actually exceeding the yards per carry number from his rookie season of 2023 and last year's historic offense, the last time that Ben Johnson would call the plays. In my opinion, after a performance like this, Gibbs will certainly be the focus of the Packers' defense on Thursday. Dan Campbell and John Morton and Jared Goff can kind of use that against them in some instances to maybe use Gibbs as a decoy as well. It obviously has to be talked about or mentioned, the 59-yard field goal that Jake Bates drives through the bottom right portion of the goalpost with 28 seconds left in the fourth quarter. That one started to fade right quickly. I don't know about you, what perspective you or what broadcast you watch, but I got the end zone angle directly behind the Lions offense on the broadcast, and the ball started to fade right, and then it just stopped and curled, almost kind of curled back inside, almost like a power draw, if you know anything about that in golf. And that helped in golf, G-O-L-F, not golf, G-O-F-F. And that helped the Lions force overtime and then eventually survive. For them to be outplayed by the Giants the way that they were, and Jameis Winston, in fact, being the quarterback doing so, is what really makes this game familiar for me. And what I'm hearkening back to is the week before Thanksgiving, 2023, when the Bears come to Detroit and outplay the Lions for much of the game. And in fact, they hold a 26-14 lead in the fourth quarter. Justin Fields kind of played above his head to a certain extent. And then suddenly the Lions offense got energized. I think they had a 32-yard touchdown to Jamison Williams up the right side. Eventually, with about 30 seconds left in the game, if you recall, they had just taken a 29-26 lead, and Aiden Hutchinson finishes off the day with a strip sack of Fields that also generates a safety on the play. Both of the games, the one that I'm talking about from 2023 and this one, occurred 4 days before Thanksgiving, and both of them were, in my opinion, lackluster performances by the offense and the defense at the same time. Now, you may not regard it in the same manner for Detroit's offense today because they did put up almost 500 yards of offense. But for a moment, let's focus on the defense. Clearly performed well below their standards. The Giants came in 2-9. Jameis Winston is their starter, and somehow he's able to throw for 366 and 2 touchdowns. Also caught a touchdown himself early in the fourth quarter. That one puts New York up 27-17. That's around the time for me when I thought, okay, if Detroit's able to come back and get this done, this will be very similar to the Thanksgiving Day win against the Bears in 2023. Lo and behold, they get 2 long touchdowns from Gibbs, the 49-yarder a couple minutes later after Winston's touchdown catch, and then the 69-yarder to open overtime. Hutchinson closes it out, another stinker of a game overall, with a sack of Winston on 4th and 5. It was a tough game to watch and get a ton of enjoyment out of for the defense. I have a high standard for what Kelvin Shepard and those guys have done so far in 2025, but especially recently. They had come in on a roll. I could not have foreseen them getting clowned by a clown like Jameis Winston like this. They had the trick play on their first possession, the first third down that the Giants faced. Well, actually, I guess it's their second. There's a 3rd and 7. Winston throws incomplete. First possession of the game I'm talking about. And Hutchinson had jumped off sides. So gives them another opportunity, 3rd and 2. Double pass, a flea flicker, whatever you want to call it. And Winston finds Wan'Dale Robinson for 39 yards. I don't know if Amik is supposed to be in man or not. He's challenging late. To me, it looked like, maybe the free safety should have been over there. There's definitely a D tackle. I think it's Williams who is rushing onto Jameis Winston, is unable to corral him or front him up at all. In any case, it ended up being a 39-yard touchdown to Wan'Dale Robinson, who really scorched Amik Robertson and others, throughout the day. The tone was set at that point. Things were still ominous a couple hours later, or 2 hours plus thereafter, when Winston somehow pulls in a 33-yard pass. He avoided or broke the tackle of Derek Barnes. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but it happened. We saw it. For a moment, I thought it was a ball that the wide receiver, however you pronounce his name, shouldn't even throw, but he did. It was a design play, clearly. Puts the Giants up 27-17 with 12:15 left. I don't know about you. At that point, I'm like aghast because this defense had, 4 weeks ago or 5 games ago at this point, they had totally wiped out the Bucs at home. Last week stopped the Eagles multiple times in Philly when the offense for Detroit was short-circuiting completely. They did lose 16-9, but they held the Eagles to 272 yards overall and just 124 through the air. 7 days later, give up 366 to Jameis Winston. So I'm interested and also not at the same time interested in seeing the All-22 film, how this happened. It took a heroic, really MVP type effort from Gibbs for the Lions to scratch and claw their way to a 34-27 overtime win. They actually had a chance to do this, I guess, in a little bit more of a traditional way. After Gibbs' 49-yard touchdown early in the fourth quarter, predictably, Winston he's going to throw you 2 or 3 opportunities for interceptions. If he throws the ball 30 times, you're going to have chances to go take it from him. And in typical fashion, for this day at least, yes, the Lions capitalized and got the interception. They're down 27-24, and then Goff and the Lions go 3 and out. I was just like, really? You have an opportunity there to take the lead, kind of reestablish things, put the Giants on the back foot. After an interception, the announcer goes out of his way to make excuses for Winston 2 separate times. No way he could see that guy. I'm not sure that you can blame Winston for that. He couldn't even see that defender. Then why throw it? In any case, 3 plays later or 4 snaps later, Detroit ends up punting, still down 27-24. Things get really kind of crazy and inexplicable on the Giants' 14-play drive that ensues. Again, they're up 27-24, They convert 3 third downs, including one of which was a DPI on Branch. Kind of a soft call, but I think he definitely reached out and grabbed the tight end. It's the one that bothers me a lot is a 3rd and 17, 4-man rush. I think Muhammad and a defensive tackle are there to sack Jameis Winston, and they're unable to do so. He hits the tight end, Theo Johnson, over the top. Inexplicable. There's just no justification for what the Giants do next. Fortunately, we're all rooting for the Lions here. I'm talking about the 4th and goal from the 6-yard line with just below 3 minutes left. There's no way to put that into perspective on a day when you've been able to score. So, yeah, the Lions would need a touchdown to win. That's the whole point, dummy. So thank whoever the interim coach is. I think it's Kafka, but I could be wrong. Look, the Lions had to drive all the way down. Ended up facing a 3rd and 10 on the other side of the 50, the Giants' 41-yard line. Goff throws an incompletion on that 3rd and 10. Jack Bates curls in the 59-yard field goal to tie. Great. If you hadn't gone for it on 4th and goal from the 6 and failed, then the Lions would need a touchdown. It seems crazy to me that coaches outthink themselves so much here, but I understand it from one perspective. Okay, if we get a touchdown at that point where it's a 10-point lead and we've really got Detroit facing an uphill battle. I do want to mention it was a great play by Rock Ya-Sin on that 4th and goal from the 6. Johnson, the tight end, is open in the back of the end zone. I believe he initially lined up from the right-hand side of the offense, crossed right to left from the offense perspective. And it looks to me like a mesh concept for the Giants. So the receiver that Rock Ya-Sin is lined up over the top of, again, we're talking about the 4th and goal from the 6. That guy runs like a low drag underneath, like at the goal line. And instead of chasing because it's his own reaction, Rock Ya-Sin falls off and gets depth. As a result of the depth that he got, he's able to put himself in position to knock away or defend the pass intended for the tight end. If he's not there, it's a touchdown. And, we may have a totally different tone here in terms of the way we're judging that decision by the Giants and the way we're looking at the Lions season overall. It's also another one that could have been an interception. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin has the ball in his hands. So a lot to consider there for the Giants. I think the decision they made is just idiotic, overthinking it. If you put yourself up by 6 in that situation, Detroit's got to go down and score a touchdown. But inability to tackle Gibbs perhaps was a part of that decision for the Giants. They did get another stop in overtime. I'm talking about the Giants. I'm talking about the Lions. After they had uncorked the 69-yarder by Gibbs on the first snap, it's up the middle. Both of his touchdowns are kind of middle right-hand side. Defense got a stop in overtime, like I said, even though they unfortunately forfeited a 4th and 10 on an 11-yard scramble by Winston. So just very difficult to understand the quality of defensive play that we saw today compared to what we've, at this point, come to expect from Kelvin Shepherd's side. But to get a win out of it, albeit an ugly one, at least feels better to now be at 7-4. Hutchinson puts the stamp on it right against the right tackle, finally, beating that guy for a sack. Now, he did get 6 quarterback hits. I was having trouble believing what I was seeing, that right tackle was able to hold down Hutchinson so much. First of all, the guy's in a bad stance that he can hardly get out of, and then he can almost not be bothered to give maximum effort for more than 3 seconds at a time, and Hutchinson has such a great motor. In any case, he came up clutch. When you needed him in overtime, it just maybe took too long to see that type of impact from Hutchinson on a day when, like I said, he did have 6 quarterback hits. I definitely want to take a look at the coverages that Shepard and the Lions played, and try to examine or explain how New York was able to generate so many big plays. I do know this. Other than Hutchinson, no pressure on the quarterback whatsoever. Complain about Hutchinson all you want, and I've seen things on social media already. That's fine. I will agree to the point that I think he should dominate that matchup against 72, and he did nothing for large stretches of the day. Nobody else did for the most part either. Zero pressure on the quarterback much of the day. Winston's kind of standing in there surveying, and he can throw when and where he wanted. Hutchinson finished with the lone sack on the day, 6 quarterback hits. I do think it's a little reactionary to say that he didn't play well at all, but 72 certainly won a large number of their matchups in one-on-one situations. And Hutchinson, we would like to see him have more impact, in my opinion. Globally, New York held the ball for 37 minutes of gameplay. It's not like the run game was dominant. It took them 39 carries to get to 122 yards. Certain guys I thought were in position to make plays, and in fact, had opportunities to make game-changing plays. Jack Campbell did have 11 tackles and kind of arrived at the run game in the right gap at the right time like he does always. Amik Robertson had 7 tackles. I did not think it was a solid game in coverage for him. Just from the broadcast angle, and then I did rewatch the first half in particular, I did not think Amik was in great position. I thought he was losing in man. Now, I will say this. He had an exceptional rep in a cover 2 when Winston, again, did not comprehend or understand the coverage he was presented with post-snap, kind of tried to throw an over route when he had a lot of time to throw, in fact, and Amik kind of fell off and tipped the ball up in the air. The announcers kind of even covered it and identified it as a cover 2, at least to that side. We'll talk about the offense a little bit. St. Brown had the huge drop that led to an interception. Again, another phrase or sentence that I kind of can't believe that I'm uttering. He finished with 9 catches on 13 targets for 149 yards. Also has the really beautiful touchdown. It's a 3rd and goal from the 11-yard line. At that point, New York is up 10-0. And the screen actually looks kind of congested. The first, as it's coming through live, St. Brown is able to burst through. He's very disciplined on those angles, and they do a nice job generally running those screens to the right. He cuts underneath of the blockers and gets in from 11 yards out. I think it's about 4 minutes into the second quarter. Unfortunately, he had that drop in the third quarter that's also a 3rd and 11. And what makes it kind of a compounding mistake is that it's in the red zone, and it was totally unforced. It's underneath of zone. Maybe the ball is 2 feet or, maybe a foot or 2 feet more to his outside than he was expecting. But there's just no reason why, from a Goff standpoint, that ends up being an interception. Now, there is a running back wide open in the flats, but I think Goff was on St. Brown a little bit earlier. There's just really nothing that can prepare us for seeing St. Brown have these drops as a fan. He's been so reliable. Those guys, those two, Goff and St. Brown, went through 29 targets or catches to targets in a row in 2024. So this is frustrating and confusing to sit through as a fan or someone like me who tries to observe it and then analyze the game. Simultaneous to that, Jameson Williams goes without a catch. Only 3 targets. It's like you're missing Laporta and still can't find a way to get Jameson Williams involved. Just very unusual dynamic right now for the Detroit Lions offense, even though it's a day when they, come close to 500 total yards. Gibbs kind of saved the day with the 2 big touchdown runs. Moving forward, things have got to be cleaner to beat the Packers on Thanksgiving. Now, having said that, you would obviously take, if someone said, hey, would you take 500 yards of offense and only 1 turnover on Thanksgiving Day and expect to win? Of course you would, right? I'm just not sure that you can get to those numbers against the Packers defense. Way more talented, far better coached, and they play a lot of zone defense that you're going to have to throw the ball in between windows or underneath of. Now, Goff did finish 28 of 42. The 1 interception that I don't really think is his fault. I don't get to watch press conferences or listen to them. The only information I get about those things is usually relayed to me through the Lions Discord. So it's possible that he's taken, the onus for that. Hey, my throw was a foot off or 2 feet off or whatever. Amon is looking for the ball in a different location. I still think you got to catch that football. It can't end up popping up in the air against the zone defense. So Goff goes for 279 through the air, the 2 touchdowns, 1 short one to Gibbs, and then the aforementioned screen to St. Brown that got the Lions on the board in the second quarter. They did end up at 7.6 yards per play for the game, Detroit. The offenses combined for over 1,000 yards together. If you parse out the 2 Gibbs runs, the 49-yard touchdown run in the third quarter and the 69-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter, you're still at 5.96 yards per play. So they were able to get big, plays going down the field. Khalif Raymond had the leaping 30-yard catch, though he did leave with an injury. Brock Wright had a 20-yarder. The lack of impact or catches at all for Williams, to me, is a huge concern. There's got to be a way to get him involved early against the Packers and kind of create that 3-headed monster between Gibbs, St. Brown, and Williams, with Laporta being out for pretty much the rest of the season, if not, long stretches at this point. I think he underwent surgery already. Got to find a way to get Jameson Williams involved, whatever that is. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be reverses, but some underneath stuff certainly, to me, seems like a great opportunity to get him the football and let him run. This is a historic day for Gibbs. He'll be the first film study video, obviously, that I put out. He scored 3 touchdowns, 2 of which long runs, showed his true value and the danger that he presents the defense with the ball in his hands. I do wonder about some ways to use him as a decoy. I say next week. It's really 4 days from now. It'll be this week. I'll cover that game, obviously. I've considered, maybe live streaming during that game. If you guys would be interested in that, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm not exactly sure how to even do that. I know I use OBS to be able to live stream. I understand how to do it, but I'm not sure how I would track the plays with the possibility of things being delayed, meaning a 10 to 15 second delay on my end could be totally different than people who are watching the stream. So in any case, it'll be an interesting dynamic or exchange between the Packers and the Lions defense, or the Packers defense against the Lions, in that Green Bay shut down Gibbs in week 1. If you recall, he had 19 touches for 50 yards. Weird, he had 10 targets, 10 catches, right? But only 31 yards. So something's got to give. With his play recently, almost 600 yards of offense in the last 3 games. I do not think that it is out of the stretch of the imagination that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to put himself in MVP consideration. I know that it always goes to a quarterback. First of all, it shouldn't. Second of all, if you look at what Gibbs offers, it's a wide receiver dynamic from simple, safe run concepts. And there's probably a better way to explain that or to forward the idea that he should be considered But basically, you don't have to risk pass protection and throwing the ball 30 yards downfield to get the possibility of a 40 or a 50-yard touchdown out of Jahmyr Gibbs. Will that dynamic exist against the Packers? Well, they did close him off completely in the run game last time, as well as David Montgomery. I look forward to covering that game, number one, but I also want to see how often Dan Campbell and John Morton are going to have these guys in 11 versus 12 personnel. So basically, I'm looking for jumbo 11 personnel groupings with the tight end, skipper, or whoever the jumbo tight end is set into the boundary, with the nickel defender set to the field. The idea for me here would be run the ball into the boundary, force the Packers to maybe overplay their hand to stop the run into the boundary with Gibbs, and then maybe scald them with some play action or some screens to the field. Perhaps a too simplistic explanation to do so just verbally for you guys, so maybe I'll try to examine that Wednesday night or maybe Thursday morning if you guys would be interested in something like that. I tried to put something out early Sunday morning, a forecast of what to look for, and of course I was wrong. Under center play action, utilizing the under center game. Yeah, we did get touchdowns from Gibbs, both of which, long touchdowns from Gibbs, both of which were, from under center from a run game standpoint, but I don't think I was, over the target necessarily with what I put out on Sunday morning. But in any case, if you guys would be interested in that, feel free to let me know. It's going to be an unusual week. We are one of many people that ends up traveling, but it actually makes it easier for me to put out content by doing so, because we're with family that kind of can watch our kids and help me put out a little bit more content than I typically do. In any case, if you guys appreciated the video or enjoyed it, please feel free to grab a link and share this video out on social media somewhere so that other Lions fans can enjoy it as well. Appreciate you guys' time.